The rain was a cold sheet, hammering the roof of my sedan. Every drop sounded like a tiny fist hitting the metal. My wipers fought a losing battle, smearing the neon lights of the city into a watercolor blur. Another Tuesday night. Another night of chasing $5 fares in a car that smelled like damp upholstery and desperation. My name is Leland Volkov. I'm 73 years old, and I'm invisible. A notification pinged on my phone, mounted precariously to the dash. A pickup at St. Jude's Hospital. My back seized as I cranked the wheel, a hot poker of pain jabbing from my spine to my hip. I ignored it. Pain was just a passenger, like everyone else. It didn't pay, but it never left. The last 6 months had been a masterclass in falling. My wife Penelope was gone, the cancer taking her in a brutal, efficient sprint. Before I could even process the silence in our home, my sons, Marcus and Elias, had sat me down. They had concerns. Concerns about the upkeep of the house. Concerns about my financial stability. Their concern looked a lot like a real estate agent's folder. They sold my home of 40 years in 2 weeks. My home, Penelope's home. They split the profits and handed me 3 months' rent for a room in a building that smelled of boiled cabbage and mold. "You'll be happier this way, Dad," Marcus had said, his eyes already calculating his share. "Less to worry about." Now I worried about everything. I worried about the gas tank, hovering near empty. I worried about the rent, due Friday. I worried about the gnawing emptiness in my stomach that a bag of stale pretzels couldn't fix. I was a father, a widower, a man who had worked his whole life, and I was surviving on the digital crumbs of a gig economy. I pulled up to the hospital's discharge curb, the automatic doors hissing open and closed. A man in an orderly's uniform pushed a wheelchair out, a frail figure huddled under a thin blanket. The orderly helped him to his feet, a slow, agonizing process. The man looked ancient, his bones like a bird's, wrapped in an expensive-looking wool coat. I got out, my own joints cracking in protest, and opened the rear door. "Need a hand, sir?" The old man squinted at me, his eyes a pale, watery blue. He paused, one hand clutching the doorframe, and just stared. His gaze was sharp, analytical, like he wasn't just looking at me, but through me. "Sir?" I prompted, the rain dripping from my nose. He didn't move. He just kept staring, his mouth slightly open. It was unnerving. "My God," he whispered, his voice a dry rustle. "It can't be. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." I helped the old man into the back seat. He was light, almost weightless, but his grip on my arm was surprisingly strong. He settled into the seat, his breathing shallow, but he never took his eyes off my face. I got back in the driver's seat, the damp cold seeping into my clothes. "Where to?" I asked, looking at the app. The destination was a high-end assisted living facility across town. "Wait," he commanded. His voice, though quiet, had an authority that made me pause. "What? What is your name?" "Leland, sir. Leland Volkov." The name hit him like a physical blow. He leaned forward, his hand grasping the back of my headrest. "Volkov," he repeated. "And your father? What was his name?" A cold prickle ran down my neck. This was getting strange. Henry Volkov. He passed away 30 years ago. Why?" The man sank back into the seat. A sound, half sob, half laugh, escaped his lips. He fumbled in his coat pocket and pulled out a linen handkerchief, pressing it to his eyes. "Henry Volkov," he whispered to himself. "After all this time." "Sir, are you all right? Do you need me to call the orderly?" No, no, son, he said, waving a trembling hand. He looked up, his eyes locking onto mine in the rearview mirror. My name is Arthur Templeton, and 60 years ago your father saved my life. I stared at him. The man was clearly sick, fresh from the hospital, maybe confused. Sir, I think... Change the destination, Arthur interrupted. He gave me an address downtown, the Templeton Building. I knew the place, a skyscraper of black glass and steel that devoured an entire city block. That's an office building, sir. It'll be closed. It's my building, Mr. Volkov. It's never closed to me. He leaned back, a strange, exhausted peace settling on his features. Please, I don't have much time. I have something to show you, something that belongs to you. The ride was silent. The only sound was the thwack-thwack of the wipers and Arthur's soft, rattling breath. I kept glancing at him in the mirror. He looked like a ghost, a relic from an era of three-piece suits and handshake deals. I'd had my share of strange fares, but this was a new level. Part of me wanted to drive him to the assisted living facility as planned, the sane part. But the part that was desperate, the part that had nothing to lose, was curious. And the way he said my father's name, it wasn't just recognition, it was reverence. We pulled into the private underground garage of the Templeton Building. A security guard, seeing Arthur in the back, immediately waved us through to a private elevator. The man was clearly important. Please, Leland, Arthur said, his hand on my arm as I helped him out. Come with me. It's important. I was just a driver. My shift was ending, but I nodded. Okay, Mr. Templeton, I'll come up. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse office. It wasn't an office, it was a cavern. One entire wall was a sheet of glass, the city's lights glittering below us like a carpet of diamonds. The desk was a slab of dark wood large enough to land a helicopter on. The air smelled of old leather, floor wax, and money. Please, Arthur rasped, gesturing to a leather sofa. He shuffled, leaning heavily on a cane I hadn't noticed before, toward a large, abstract oil painting on the far wall. It was all dark blues and angry slashes of white. Fiona, he called out, his voice thin. A moment later, a severe-looking woman with graying hair pulled into a tight bun entered from a side door. She looked at me with immediate suspicion, her eyes cataloging my damp, worn coat and scuffed shoes. Mr. Templeton, you should be resting, she said, her voice sharp. Water, Fiona, for both of us. And then call Samuel. Tell him to come to my office immediately. It's happened. Fiona's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Samuel? Sir? At this hour? Now, Fiona. And no interruptions. She nodded, her professional mask back in place, and vanished. Arthur turned his attention back to the painting. He pressed a spot on the frame, and with a pneumatic hiss, the entire painting swung away from the wall, revealing a massive, old-fashioned safe. It was deep green, with a large, gleaming brass wheel in the center. My father bought this in 1950, Arthur said, his fingers tracing the combination dial. He said a man's word was his bond, but a good safe kept everyone honest. He began to turn the dial. Left, right, left. The metallic click-clack was the only sound in the vast room. I was a fool when I was young, arrogant. I inherited my father's business, Templeton Textiles, and nearly ran it into the ground in 2 years. Bad investments, worse partners. By 1965, I was finished, utterly bankrupt. He stopped turning the dial. The banks wouldn't touch me. My friends vanished. I was in a bar, a dive near the factory, planning to drink myself to death. And in walks your father, I sat forward. My father, Henry Volkov, was a mechanic, a quiet man, strong hands, always stained with grease, a man of few words and absolute integrity. I couldn't picture him in a bar with a man like Arthur Templeton. He worked at the garage down the street, Arthur continued, his voice soft. I was a stranger crying into my whiskey. He sat next to me. He listened. I told him everything. My ruin. My shame. I was going to lose it all. Fiona returned, placing a tray with 2 crystal glasses of water on the coffee table. She gave me another cold look and left. Your father, Arthur said, listened to this entire pathetic story from a man he'd never met. Then he finished his beer, looked me in the eye and said, "How much do you need?" My throat was dry. I thought he was mocking me. I told him an amount that was, to me, astronomical. $30,000. In 1965. It was a fortune. He just nodded. He told me to meet him at the bank the next morning. Arthur pulled the heavy safe door open with a groan of metal. He showed up. He withdrew his entire life savings, every penny he had in the world. He handed it to me in a paper bag. No contract, no lawyers, just a handshake. He said, "I'm a good judge of character. Don't make me wrong." Inside the safe was a single worn leather folder. Arthur took it out, his hands shaking, and carried it to the massive desk. He sat down heavily and motioned for me to join him. That $30,000, Arthur said, saved my company. It saved my life. I promised him I'd pay him back with interest. More than that, I promised him a piece of the company. Arthur opened the leather folder. The documents inside were yellowed with age, brittle at the edges. He carefully slid one out. It was a stock certificate, ornate and official, for Templeton Textiles, Inc. I tried to find him 6 months later, Arthur said, his voice thick with old regret. The company was stable. We were turning a profit. I went to the garage, but he was gone. He'd quit, moved. No one knew where. I searched for years, hired investigators, put ads in papers. Nothing. It was like he had vanished. He pushed the certificate across the desk. My hands were trembling. The name on the certificate, written in elegant cursive, was Henry Volkov. I never stopped searching, Arthur whispered, and I never broke my promise. I kept his shares safe, waited for the day he or his family would appear. He pulled out a second, more modern document, a crisp, computer-printed statement. He laid it on top of the old certificate. Your father, Henry, owned 30% of my company. Those shares have been compounding, growing, waiting. He tapped the bottom line of the statement. That is the current market value of your father's faith in me. I looked at the number. My vision blurred. The digits seemed to swim. It couldn't be real. It was a mistake, a cruel joke from a senile old man. I read it again and again. $32 million. $32,000. I fell back into the chair. The room tilted. I couldn't breathe. My life, a landscape of gray poverty and small humiliations, shattered. That's not possible. It is, Arthur said, his eyes wet with tears. It's justice. 60 years late, but it's justice. It's yours, Leland. It was always your family's. The side door opened, and Fiona stepped in, followed by a man in a perfectly tailored dark suit. He looked to be in his late 50s, with sharp features, intelligent eyes, and an expression of absolute neutrality. He carried a slim leather briefcase. Leland Volkov, Arthur said, gesturing to the man. This is Samuel, my head of legal. He has known about this for 30 years. He is the man who will make this right. Samuel stepped forward and gave me a brief, firm handshake. His hand was cold. "Mr. Volkov," he said. His voice was as starched as his shirt. "A pleasure." He didn't look pleased. He looked like he was analyzing a complex equation. He sat opposite me, opened his briefcase, and extracted a thin file in a digital tablet. "Mr. Templeton informed me of the possibility of this encounter decades ago," Samuel said, his eyes scanning me. "It is my duty to inform you that while Mr. Templeton's intent is clear, there is a legal process we must now initiate to verify your identity and finalize the transfer of these assets." I was still reeling from the $32 million figure. "Process? What process?" "Standard verification," Samuel said, his tone flat. "We will require your official identification, birth certificate, and any documents proving your direct lineage to Henry Volkov. We will also require a DNA sample, which will be compared against records we have on file. This is a non-negotiable security measure for an asset transfer of this magnitude." I looked at Arthur, confused. This felt cold, accusatory. Arthur, however, looked exhausted but relieved. "It's all right, Leland. Samuel is just being thorough. He's the best." Samuel ignored the compliment. "The entire verification process, assuming no complications, should take approximately 2 weeks. Once your identity as the sole living heir of Henry Volkov is confirmed, the shares will be transferred to your name." I bristled. Samuel's thoroughness felt like suspicion. He looked at me not as a man who just had his life turned upside down, but as a potential fraud. I was a problem to be solved, a box to be ticked. I instantly distrusted him. He was a corporate shark, and his only loyalty was to the company, to Templeton Textiles, not to me and not to Arthur's promise. But in the meantime, Arthur interjected, seeing the tension. "Leland can't be living." "How have you been living, Leland?" I swallowed my pride. "It's been hard, sir. Since my wife passed. My sons. I drive a rideshare. I live in a rented room." Arthur's face crumpled. He looked at Samuel. "A room? Samuel, this man is the son of my savior, and he is living in a room. Fix it. Now." Samuel didn't flinch. "I understand, sir. An advance against the inheritance is legally permissible." He glanced at me. "What is your immediate financial need?" I was about to say a few thousand, enough for rent and food. $50,000, Arthur snapped. "Wire it to his account tomorrow. See to it personally." "Very well," Samuel said, making a note on his tablet. He looked at me. "I will need your bank account details. My assistant, Fiona, will take your information before you leave. I will schedule a formal meeting for tomorrow afternoon at my office, 28th floor, to begin the paperwork and collect the DNA sample. Do you have any questions?" I had a million questions, but the only one that mattered was, "Is this real?" Samuel closed his briefcase. "Mr. Templeton does not engage in jokes, Mr. Volkov. This is very real, and it is my job to finalize it. I will see you tomorrow at 2. He nodded to Arthur, then to me, and was gone. The chill he left behind was palpable. Arthur sighed. "He's efficient, but his heart is in the right place. He gave me his word, just as I gave your father's. It will be done." Fiona reappeared, her expression as sour as ever. She took my bank information on a tablet. Her lips pursed, as if the very act of dealing with me was distasteful. She arranged for the building's private car to take me home to my single, miserable room. I thanked Arthur, my voice hoarse. I still didn't have the words. "Thank your father," Arthur said, grasping my hand. "Just thank him." I rode back to my hovel in a black Mercedes that was worth more than I'd earned in the last 5 years. I walked into my room, with its stained carpet and single flickering light bulb, and sat on the lumpy mattress. I had $32 million, and I had a cold, calculating lawyer who I was sure would try to cheat me out of every penny. I didn't sleep. I sat on that lumpy bed and watched the cracked plaster on the wall as the sun rose, painting the grime in shades of gray and pale yellow. The night had felt like a fever dream. The skyscraper, the old man, the impossible number. At 9:04 a.m. my phone buzzed. A text from my bank. A deposit of $50,000 had cleared. I stared at the screen for a full minute. My balance, which had been $1471, now had a comma and zeros. It was real. Arthur Templeton was real. Samuel was real. My hands shook as I pulled on my worn shoes. I walked to the bank, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I stood in line, feeling out of place, a ghost in a worn jacket. I'd like to check my balance, I mumbled to the teller. She typed, and her eyebrows shot up. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. Your balance is $50,000 and $1471, sir. Can I withdraw $500 in 50s? She counted them out. Crisp, clean bills. I folded them and put them in my empty wallet. I walked out of the bank and into the sunlight. I was the same man. I was a completely different man. My first stop was a diner. Not for coffee, for a meal. I slid into a booth and ordered the largest breakfast on the menu. Steak, 3 eggs, hash browns, toast, a side of bacon, and a pot of coffee. When the plate arrived, hot and piled high, I had to stop and close my eyes. The smell of real food. I ate slowly. Every bite was a reclamation. After breakfast, I went to a department store. I'd been wearing the same 2 pairs of pants and 3 shirts for 6 months. I bought a dark gray suit. Not flashy, but solid. I bought 2 clean white shirts, new socks, new underwear, and a pair of black leather shoes that didn't have a hole in the sole. I paid in cash. The young cashier smiled at me. I wasn't invisible anymore. I went back to my room, showered in the sputtering, lukewarm water of the communal bathroom, and got dressed. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror. The man looking back was still old, still tired, but his eyes were different. The suit hung well. He looked solid. He looked like Henry Volkov's son. At 1:45 p.m. I walked into the Templeton building. This time I went through the main lobby. It was a cathedral of marble and glass. The receptionist at the main desk directed me to the 28th floor. Samuel's office was another world from Arthur's. It was all modern glass, chrome, and white leather. It felt sterile, like a laboratory. Fiona sat at a desk, looking as severe as she had the night before. "Mr. Volkov, you're early. He'll see you in a moment." I sat on an uncomfortable white sofa. I felt the familiar distrust creep in. This place, these people, they were a different species. Samuel was a corporate killer, and I was just an old man who got lucky. "Mr. Volkov, come in." Samuel was standing behind his desk. He motioned for me to sit. "I trust the funds were transferred to your satisfaction?" "Yes. Thank you." "Good." He tapped his tablet. "We have a lot to get through. I have affidavits to be signed, identity verifications, and a genealogist on standby. We also have a medical technician here to take your DNA sample." He was all business. "No, how are you feeling? No, this must be a shock. Just a checklist." It confirmed my fears. He was here to protect the company's $32 million, not to help me. A technician came in, swabbed my cheek, and left. I signed document after document. Authorizations, privacy waivers, legal declarations. My hands started to cramp. This all seems very aggressive, I said, trying to read the dense legal text. As I said, Mr. Volkov, it is a significant transfer. We must ensure there are no other potential claimants. We are running a deep genealogical trace on Henry Volkov's line as we speak. We must be 100% certain you are the sole heir. And if I'm not, then the assets will be divided according to the law, but our initial research suggests you are. He pushed another form toward me. Sign here. I left an hour later, my head spinning with legalese. Samuel had been cold, efficient, and utterly impersonal. I was more certain than ever that this man was my adversary. He was just waiting for a loophole, a way to keep the money inside the Templeton corporate fortress. As I was leaving, Fiona, the secretary, looked up from her screen. "Mr. Volkov," she said, her voice barely audible. "Yes?" She hesitated. "Mr. Templeton, he's a good man. He's waited a long time for this. Don't let him down." It was the first human thing she'd said. It was also a warning. I walked out of that glass tower and into the real world. I had a suit, a full stomach, and $49,000 in the bank. But I also had a target on my back, and I had family. I sat in my new suit, in my miserable room, and my phone rang. It was Earl, my younger son. My heart did a stupid, hopeful little jump. It was the first time he'd called me in 2 months. "Dad? Hey, Dad." His voice was awkward, forced. "Elias. Hello? Hey, so Marcus and I were talking. We were thinking, maybe we've been a little, distant since Mom." I waited. The silence stretched. "Anyway," he rushed on, "we were thinking we should all have dinner. Talk, clear the air. How's tomorrow night? That little Mexican place we used to go to, La Paloma?" Hope. It was a dangerous, stupid thing. "La Paloma? Yes, Elias, that sounds good." "Great. See you at 7, Dad." He hung up. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they'd had time to grieve, to feel remorse. Maybe they wanted their father back. I let that hope simmer for a full day. I arrived at La Paloma at 6:50 p.m. The same red vinyl booths, the same smell of fried tortillas and stale beer. Marcus and Elias were already there, a basket of chips half empty between them. "Dad," Marcus said, standing for an awkward, one-armed hug. "You look good. New suit?" "Just something I picked up," I said, sliding into the booth. Elias smiled, a thin, nervous expression. "It's good to see you, Dad. Really good." We ordered. The small talk was excruciating. The weather, the traffic. They asked how the rideshare was going. "It's fine," I said. "Pays the bills? Mostly." "Yeah, about that," Marcus said, wiping his hands on a napkin. He leaned forward, adopting his serious businessman voice. "Look, Dad, we know things have been rough, and we feel bad. We really do. We were hasty with the house. We see that now." Elias nodded eagerly. "So much guilt, Dad. You have no idea." "So," Marcus continued, "we've come up with a solution to help you out." I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. This wasn't remorse. It was a pitch. "Elias has that old servant's room off the kitchen in his new place," Marcus said, as if offering me a kingdom. "It's small, but it's got its own bathroom. And we figured you could move in there. We'd only charge you, say, $100 a month, just to cover utilities." Elias jumped in. "And you'd be around family. You'd have to help out, of course, nothing strenuous. Just, Mow the lawn, maybe wash the cars on the weekend, watch the kids now and then. It's a win-win, right? I stared at them. My sons. My flesh and blood. They had sold my home from under me, left me in a hovel, and now, out of the goodness of their hearts, they were offering me a job as a live-in servant, a janitor with a family discount. They weren't just greedy, they were cruel, and they were stupid enough to think this was generous. I felt a strange calm wash over me. The last flicker of hope died, and in its place a cold clarity. I smiled, a small, thin smile. Wow, a servant's room. Thank you, boys. That's quite an offer? We thought so, Marcus said, beaming. But I have to decline, I said, my voice quiet. Their smiles froze. What? Dad, you can't afford to be proud. It's not pride, Marcus. It's just, my circumstances have changed. As of last night. Elias frowned. What are you talking about? You win the lottery? He laughed, a short, barking sound. Something like that, I said. I leaned forward, just as Marcus had. You remember your grandfather, Henry Volkov? Barely, Marcus said, impatient. What about him? Well, 60 years ago, he did a very good deed for a man. He loaned him his life savings. That man's name was Arthur Templeton. They just stared. I met Mr. Templeton last night. It turns out he never forgot. He's been holding on to your grandfather's share of his company all this time. 30%. I let the words hang in the air. And last night, I said, my voice dropping, he gave it to me. Elias's mouth was open. Gave you what? A thank you card? $32 million, I said. The silence in the booth was absolute. The restaurant faded. The only sound was a sizzling fajita platter at another table. Marcus's face went white, then red. You're lying. I'm not. I took the bank receipt for my $500 withdrawal from my pocket. It showed the $50,000 advance. This was the down payment. Marcus snatched the receipt. He stared at it. $50,000, he whispered. Elias's eyes were wide, darting between me and the paper. Then, the transformation. It was instantaneous. Marcus's shock dissolved into a huge, manic grin. Dad, oh my God, Dad, that's incredible. We're rich. He was practically vibrating. We are? I asked. Of course. Elias jumped in, his voice suddenly thick with false love. We're a family. Oh, Dad, this is amazing. We have to celebrate. We need to make plans. We can help you manage it. You shouldn't have to worry about all that money at your age. We'll take care of everything. Yes, Marcus agreed, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying, raw greed. We'll hire the best investment people. We're a team, Dad. The Volkov family, back on top. They were babbling, planning, spending my money. 5 minutes ago, I was a potential lawn boy. Now I was the patriarch of a team. I held up my hand. They stopped, their faces flushed with excitement. Boys, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Let me be very clear. I told them everything. The last 6 months, the cold room, the stale pretzels. The pain in my back from driving 12 hours a day. The silence from their phones. In all that time, I said, in all that misery, neither of you called. Not once. Not to see if I was alive. Dad, we were busy, Elias stammered. You were busy, I cut him off. Busy spending your mother's memory. Busy selling my home. And tonight, you offered me a cot in a closet in exchange for washing your cars. You didn't come here to see your father. You came here to hire cheap labor. That's not fair, Marcus protested, his face darkening. It is the truth. And here is another truth. I leaned in. You will not see 1 cent of that money. Not one. It is not our money. It is my inheritance. An inheritance from a man you never knew. A man whose honor you wouldn't understand. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Elias looked like he was going to be sick. You can't do that, Marcus whispered, his voice shaking with rage. We're your sons. It's our money too. It's a family inheritance. You stopped being my family when you put me on the street, I said. I stood up, pulling a 20 from my wallet and throwing it on the table. That's for my tacos. Enjoy your dinner. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving them in the stunned, furious silence. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had finally, blessedly, cut the cancer out. I underestimated their greed. 2 days later, I was back in Samuel's sterile white office. I was supposed to be getting an update on the DNA verification, which Samuel had confirmed was a 99.9% match. We have a problem, Mr. Volkov, Samuel said. He didn't look up from his tablet. A problem? The DNA was a match, right? The DNA is confirmed. This is a new development. He slid a thick, stapled legal document across the desk. I was served this morning, Samuel said, his voice flat. As was Mr. Templeton. It's an emergency injunction. Filed by your sons, Marcus and Elias Volkov. I picked it up. My hands were steady, but my stomach was full of ice. An injunction? For what? They are petitioning the court for legal guardianship. Of you. Guardianship? I laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. On what grounds? On the grounds, Samuel said, finally looking at me, his eyes cold. That you are mentally incompetent, senile, suffering from delusions brought on by grief. They claim you are the victim of a predatory corporate scheme by Templeton Textiles, and that Mr. Templeton and I are manipulating you to steal your rightful family inheritance. I dropped the document. They're trying to have me declared insane? Incapacitated, Samuel corrected. It's a common and often effective predatory legal tactic, and they were clever. They filed it with an emergency request to freeze all asset transfers related to your name until a competency hearing can be held. The room felt very cold. Freeze the assets? You mean, I mean, Samuel said, tapping the document, that as of 9 a.m. this morning, the $32 million is locked. The transfer is halted. We are, as they say, dead in the water. This was the lost advantage. The simple 2-week process was gone. My greedy, monstrous sons had just dragged me into a legal war, a public, humiliating war for my own mind. They can't be serious, I whispered. A judge will laugh this out of court. Do not underestimate them, Mr. Volkov, Samuel said, his voice sharp. They have a lawyer. They will have evidence. They will testify that you are confused, that you're telling wild stories about millions of dollars. Your very story, the true one, sounds like a delusion. An old, grieving man, suddenly a millionaire? It's the perfect narrative for them. He was right. My own truth was their best weapon. So what do we do? I asked, the anger starting to burn through the shock. We fight, Samuel said. This hearing is in 3 days. We have 72 hours to prove that you are not only sane, but that your sons are the predators. This is a nightmare. It is a legal problem, Samuel said, standing up. And I will solve it. Go home, Mr. Volkov. Get your rest. My team and I will be in touch. We have a lot of work to do. He was so calm, so detached. I was facing a public trial for my sanity, and he was treating it like a scheduling conflict. My distrust for him solidified into pure hatred. He was going to let this happen. He was probably on their side. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I walked the streets for hours, the legal papers a lead weight in my hand. The city blurred around me. I was furious. I was terrified. What if they won? What if some judge saw an old man, heard my story, and sided with my concerned, well-dressed sons? I'd be locked away. They'd get the money. They'd win. The anger boiled over. I turned around and marched back to the Templeton building. I didn't care what time it was. I jabbed the button for the 28th floor. The receptionist was gone, but the lights in Samuel's office were still on. I slammed his door open. He was at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, surrounded by stacks of paper. Fiona was next to him, highlighting documents. They both looked up, startled. "Mr. Volkov, I told you to—" "You told me to go home," I shouted, throwing the injunction papers onto his pristine desk. "You told me you'd solve it. You're not solving anything. You're letting them do this." Fiona stood up. "Sir, please." "You." I jabbed a finger at Samuel. "You're on their side, aren't you? This is all a game for you. Protect the company. Maybe you cut a deal with them. Let the senile old man get put away, and the company settles with the sons for a fraction. Is that it?" Samuel's face didn't change. He just looked at me. "You don't care about me," I spat, my voice cracking. "You don't care about Arthur's promise. This is just a hostile legal action for you, and you're losing." I was breathing hard, my chest tight. I had crossed a line, but I didn't care. Samuel stood up. Slowly. He was taller than I thought. He walked around the desk until he was standing right in front of me. His eyes were not cold anymore. They were blazing. "You think," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl, "that I don't care?" He snatched a framed photo from Fiona's desk. It was of a much younger Samuel, standing next to a healthy, smiling Arthur Templeton on a boat. "I started in the mailroom of this company, Mr. Volkov. Arthur Templeton saw something in me. He paid for my law school. He made me who I am. 25 years ago, he brought me into his office, opened that safe, and told me the story of Henry Volkov. He was inches from my face. I could feel the heat coming off him. He told me, 'Samuel, I am an old man, and I have one great sin. I never repaid the man who saved me. I will find his family before I die, or you will.' He made me give him my word. My word, Mr. Volkov. Not as his lawyer, but as his friend." He slammed the photo back on the desk. "For 25 years, I have helped him search. For 25 years, I have managed that asset, protected it, prepared for the day you would walk through that door. Your sons are not just attacking you. They are attacking my promise. They are attacking Arthur's dying wish." He leaned in. "So you think I don't care? You think I'm losing? I am going to take your sons into that courtroom, and I am going to personally, legally, and metaphorically rip them to shreds. I am going to defend my promise, and I am going to defend Arthur's honor. And you are going to let me work." I was stunned into silence. This was the real Samuel. The cold, corporate shark was a mask. Beneath it was a man of furious, absolute loyalty. I'm sorry," I stammered. "I don't need your apology," Samuel snapped. "I need your cooperation. Fiona, get him a coffee, a strong one. We're not sleeping tonight. Mr. Volkov, sit down. We are going to build our case." Fiona, who I had also misjudged, gently pushed me into a chair. She handed me a steaming mug, her hand resting on my shoulder for just a second. It was a gesture of solidarity. "Okay," I said, my voice shaky. "Okay, Samuel. What do you need?" For the first time, Samuel smiled. It was a terrifying, predatory expression. "Everything," he said. "I need everything." The next 72 hours were a blur. Samuel's office became our war room. We didn't sleep. We lived on stale coffee and adrenaline. Fiona was a quiet, efficient machine, digging up records I didn't know existed. "We need a timeline," Samuel said, pacing in front of a large whiteboard. "A precise, second-by-second timeline of your son's actions versus your own." "Fiona," he barked, "get me his rideshare logs for the last 6 months. I want every pickup, every fare, every hour he was on the road." "I need the rental agreement for your room," he said to me. "I want the name of your landlord. I want to put him on the stand." "I need your bank records," he continued. "I want to show the court a balance of 14,700 the day before you met Arthur." We worked. I recounted every painful detail of the last 6 months. The conversation where Marcus and Elias kicked me out. The dates, the words, the condescending pity. Fiona found the real estate listing for my old house. "Sold. $850,000, she read. "And his share," Samuel muttered, "was a $1,200 deposit on a slum." Then I remembered the diner. "The diner," I said. "La Paloma. Their offer. The servants' room." Samuel stopped pacing. "When was this?" "The night before they filed the injunction. They called me, pretended to be sorry, then they offered me a job as their janitor." Samuel's wolfish grin returned. "Fiona, get the credit card record for that dinner. Get the security footage from the restaurant if you can. I want to prove the timeline. I want to show the judge exactly what their filial concern looked like 24 hours before they filed for guardianship." Fiona worked the phones. She was polite, then firm, then threatening with legal subpoenas. By noon the next day, she had it all. The rideshare logs, proving I was working 70-hour weeks. The bank statements, proving my poverty. The testimony from my landlord, describing my miserable but lucid state. And the crown jewel, a time-stamped credit card receipt from La Paloma in Marcus Volkov's name. "This is it," Samuel said, holding the small slip of paper like it was a winning lottery ticket. "This is the nail." "It's just a receipt," I said. "It's the timeline," he corrected. 1. Total abandonment. 2. You reveal the $32 million. 3. They panic, offer you a servant's room to get back in. 4. You reject them. 5. 48 hours later, they file a claim that you are senile. This receipt is the pivot point. It proves their motive wasn't concern, it was revenge. As we prepared, Fiona's coldness toward me evaporated. She was part of the team. She kept my coffee mug full. She'd say, "You're doing well, Leland," when I finished recounting a painful memory for Samuel to use. She and Samuel worked with a silent, practiced efficiency. They were a two-person army. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a client. And I felt, strangely, safe. "Tomorrow," Samuel said, putting on his suit jacket as the sun rose on the day of the hearing. "You will not be emotional. You will be calm. You will be clear. You will be sane. You will let me do the talking, and you will watch me dismantle your sons. Are we clear?" "Clear," I said, my voice steady. She good. Go home. Get 1 hour of sleep, and wear the suit you bought. The courtroom was small, cold, and smelled of disinfectant. Marcus and Elias were already there, sitting with their shark-faced lawyer. They were dressed in dark, somber suits. When they saw me, they put on faces of deep, sorrowful concern. Elias even had the nerve to look like he was wiping away a tear. I just stared back, my face a mask of stone. Samuel had trained me well. "We are here," the judge said, a tired-looking woman with gray hair, "on the emergency petition of Marcus and Elias Volkov for guardianship of their father, Leland Volkov." My son's lawyer went first. He painted a masterpiece of bullshit. He described a loving, grieving father who, in the fog of his wife's passing, had become untethered from reality. He claimed I was telling wild, fantastical stories of inheriting millions. "My clients are not motivated by greed, Your Honor," the lawyer said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "They are motivated by fear. Fear for their father's safety. They have discovered he is being targeted by a large corporation, Templeton Textiles, in a sophisticated scheme to defraud him." Then Marcus took the stand. It was sickening. He wept. He actually produced tears. "We just want our dad back," he choked out. "He's not himself. He's confused. He talks about 32 million. It's breaking our hearts. We tried to help him. We offered to have him come live with us. And he lashed out. He's paranoid. We're so scared he'll be taken advantage of." Elias followed, echoing the lies. "We love him. We just want to protect him." The judge looked at me with open pity. My stomach turned. She was buying it. Then it was Samuel's turn. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the podium. "Your Honor," he said, his voice calm and clear. "We agree on one point. This is a case about a predatory and shameful act. But the predators are sitting right over there." The son's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! Character assassination!" "Sit down, counselor," the judge snapped. "Continue, Mr. Samuel," he said. "Just Samuel. Your Honor, I am head of legal for Templeton Textiles, and I was Mr. Arthur Templeton's personal attorney. The $32 million inheritance is not a delusion. It is a fact." He proceeded to lay out the evidence. He presented the notarized 60-year-old stock certificate. He presented the current asset valuation. He presented the positive DNA report, legally binding. The judge's eyes widened. "This is highly unusual," the judge said. "It is a highly unusual story of honor, Your Honor," Samuel said. "A promise kept for 60 years. What is not unusual, sadly, is the story that comes next." He turned to Marcus, who was still on the stand. "Mr. Volkov," Samuel started, his voice deceptively soft. "You testified that you are heartbroken by your father's delusions. Is that correct?" "Yes," Marcus said, puffing up. "Completely. And you're terrified he's being taken advantage of?" "Yes. And this terror, this overwhelming concern for his welfare. When did it begin?" Marcus stammered. When we realized he was confused, when he started talking about all this money." "I see." Samuel picked up a document. "Your Honor, this is a rideshare log for Mr. Leland Volkov. It shows that in the 4 months preceding his delusion, he worked an average of 71 hours per week. This is his bank statement, showing a balance of $14.71. And this is his rental agreement for a 10x10 room with a shared bath. In all that time, his sons were so concerned about him. Their phone records show 0 calls, 0 texts." Marcus went pale. "But then," Samuel continued, "something changed. Mr. Volkov, you had dinner with your father on the night of October 28th, did you not? At La Paloma restaurant?" Yes. We were trying to reach him. Is that when you offered him a job as your brother's live-in maintenance man?" "Objection!" the lawyer screamed. "Overruled," the judge said. her eyes fixed on Marcus. "Answer the question, Mr. Volkov." It wasn't a job," Marcus sputtered. "It was a place to stay." "A place to stay," Samuel repeated, "in exchange for light chores. And at this dinner your father, the senile man, informed you of the $32 million inheritance. Is that correct?" Marcus didn't answer. "And is it correct," Samuel's voice was like ice, "that less than 48 hours after he rejected your generous offer and informed you that you would not be receiving any of that money, you filed this petition to have him declared mentally incompetent?" Silence. "You weren't concerned he was delusional, Mr. Volkov," Samuel said, his voice low. "You were terrified he was lucid. You weren't trying to protect him. You were trying to get your hands on his money. It was a smash and grab. And when he said no, you filed this shameful petition as an act of petty, greedy revenge." Samuel turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the only predators in this room are the men who would sell their father's home, abandon him to poverty, and then try to have him committed to an asylum when they realized he had a fortune they couldn't steal. We ask for an immediate dismissal with prejudice." The judge stared at Marcus, her face a mask of pure disgust. "Mr. Volkov, you can step down." She looked at me. "Mr. Leland Volkov, please rise." I stood, my legs shaking. "Sir," she said, her voice soft now, "I have no questions. I have rarely seen such a transparently predatory and shameful act in this courtroom. The petition for guardianship is dismissed with extreme prejudice. The emergency freeze on the assets is dissolved, effective immediately. I am referring your son's conduct to the district attorney's office for review of potential elder abuse and perjury." Marcus let out a strangled cry. "You are free to go, Mr. Volkov," the judge said to me. "And my deepest apologies for what you have just endured." I nodded, unable to speak. I turned and walked out of the courtroom. Samuel was right behind me. As the doors closed, I heard Marcus start screaming, "You can't do this! That's our money!" Samuel and I didn't look back. We stood in the marble hallway of the courthouse. The silence was deafening after the raw, nerved tension of the hearing. I was leaning against a pillar, my legs feeling like jelly. You were," I tried to say. "I told you I'd handle it," Samuel said, buttoning his jacket. He was already back to his calm, collected self. "You didn't just handle it, Samuel. You saved me." "I upheld my promise," he said simply. "That's all." Fiona was waiting by the elevators, a small, rare smile on her face. "Congratulations, Leland," she said. We did it," I said, still numb. Samuel's phone buzzed. He looked at the caller ID and his face tightened. He took the call. "Yes? I see, this morning? I understand. Yes, I'll tell him. Thank you." He hung up, and the victory drained from his face. "Samuel, what is it? What's wrong?" He looked at me, and for the first time, his eyes were not cold, not fiery, but just sad. "That was Arthur's assistant," he said, his voice quiet. "Mr. Templeton passed away peacefully in his sleep this morning, at home, surrounded by his family." The news hit me like a physical blow. "He's gone?" "He had been holding on," Samuel said. "His assistant said, she said I had called him last night after we found the diner receipt. I told him we had them. I told him it was over. He knew we were going to win. He knew his promise was safe." I leaned my head against the cold marble. Arthur. The man I'd known for less than an hour, the man who had changed my entire existence, was gone. He had died without knowing the final verdict. but he had died knowing his honor was intact. He held on, I whispered. He held on for this, to make sure that his friend's family was safe, Samuel finished. He was the most honorable man I've ever known. We rode the elevator down in silence. The victory felt hollow, tainted with grief. I had won my fortune, but the man who gave it to me was gone. I had won my freedom from my sons, but lost the man who was, in a strange way, the father I had just found. He fulfilled his promise, I said, more to myself than to Samuel. Yes, he did, Samuel said. And now, Leland, it's time for you to start living. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal finalities and quiet grief. With the injunction gone, the asset transfer was completed in days. Samuel handled everything. I signed the last stack of papers in his office. It was done. I was, on paper and in reality, the owner of $32 million in Templeton Textiles stock. Samuel, his promise fulfilled, transitioned from a legal warrior back to a guide. You need a financial advisor, he said. Not a broker, a real wealth manager. I've prepared a list of 3 people I trust. The best. The one I'd use for my own mother. He pointed to the top name. Richard Sterling. He's a bulldog, but he's honest. He'll protect your capital. I met with Richard Sterling the next day. He was, as Samuel promised, a bulldog. A short, stocky man in his 50s with a no-nonsense attitude. I've read your file, Richard said, not bothering with small talk. Incredible story. Horrible sons. Let's get to work. You have 2 options. Sell it all or keep it all. I recommend neither. He laid out what he called the hybrid plan. We sell 50% of the shares. That's $16 million liquid. We put $10 million into a diversified, conservative portfolio of bonds and index funds. It'll generate a passive, safe income for you for the rest of your life. We keep $6 million in a high-yield savings account. That's your go-to-hell money. For emergencies, for luxuries, for whatever you want. And the other half? I asked. The other $16 million. We keep it. In Templeton Textiles stock. The company is solid. It pays a massive annual dividend. You'll get that income on top of your other investments. It gives you the best of both worlds, liquidity and long-term growth. You'll be wealthy, but more importantly, you'll be safe. It made perfect sense. Do it, I said. Done, he replied. My first act was to leave the room that smelled of cabbage. I found an apartment online, a modern, 2-bedroom place on the 15th floor of a new building. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen with gleaming new appliances, and a balcony that overlooked the city. The rent was $4,000 a month. I paid a year in advance. The first night I slept there, in a real bed with clean sheets, I slept for 12 straight hours. I bought clothes, good ones. I bought a new car, a safe, comfortable sedan. I ate at restaurants where the food was fresh and the coffee didn't taste like ash. I started to walk with my head up. The ache in my back, which had been my constant companion, began to fade. I wasn't invisible anymore. I had been in my new apartment for a month. I was sitting on my balcony, drinking real coffee and reading a book, when my phone's intercom buzzed. There are 2 gentlemen here to see you, Mr. Volkov, the doorman's voice said, heavy with disapproval. A Marcus and an Elias Volkov? They say they're your sons. They don't have an appointment. My blood ran cold. It's all right, Ben. Let them up. I was done running. I was done being afraid. This was my building, my home. I stood by the door. I heard the elevator ding. I heard their voices hushed and awed in the hallway. I opened the door before they could knock. They stood there, gaping. They looked terrible. Marcus's suit was rumpled. Elias looked like he hadn't slept in a week. The perjury investigation, I'd heard, was not going well for them. They stared past me, into the bright, sunlit apartment. They stared at the art on the walls, the new furniture, the view. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "My God, this is nice." "What do you want?" I asked. I didn't invite them in. We wanted to talk," Elias stammered, wringing his hands. "What happened in court, that was our lawyer. He was too aggressive. It wasn't... You didn't mean to have me declared senile?" I asked, my voice flat. "You didn't mean to take my money? You didn't mean to lie under oath?" "We were wrong," Marcus burst out. He was desperate. "Dad, please, we were wrong. We know that. We're so sorry. We're your family. We're your blood." He tried to step forward, to hug me. I put my hand up. "No, you don't get to do that." "But Dad, we're in trouble," Elias whined. "The legal fees, they're reviewing us for perjury. We could go to jail. You have to help us. You're our father." There it was. Not remorse, not love, fear. They were here because they were drowning, and they saw me as their lifeboat. "I am your father," I said, my voice quiet. "And you are my sons, and you abandoned me. You tried to destroy me. You tried to steal from me, and you lied about me in a court of law." I looked at them. Two grown men, hollowed out by their own greed. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel rage. I just felt nothing. A vast, sad, empty space where my love for them used to be. "The doors are closed, boys," I said. "What?" Marcus's face crumpled. No, Dad, you can't. You can't do this to us. We're your sons." "You made your choice," I said. "When you sold my house, when you offered me a servant's room, when you filed that injunction. Those were your choices. This is my choice." I stepped back and started to close the door. "Please," Elias cried, putting his hand on the doorframe. "Don't do this. We're begging you." "You'll be fine," I said, looking at his hand. "You're smart. You're resourceful. You'll figure it out." I closed the door on their shocked faces. I heard Marcus slam his fist against the wood. I heard him scream my name. I heard Elias start to sob. I turned the deadbolt, walked to my balcony, and sat back down. I picked up my coffee. My hand wasn't even shaking. It was over. 6 months later, I was standing on a different kind of stage. It wasn't a courtroom. It was the lobby of a newly renovated building, a clean, bright place with warm lighting and comfortable chairs. A sign over the entrance read, "The Henry Volkov Foundation." I was at a podium, looking out at a small crowd. Journalists, city council members. Samuel was in the front row, looking proud. Fiona was next to him, dabbing her eyes. Richard Sterling was there too. My father, Henry Volkov, was a simple man, I said into the microphone. He was a mechanic. He believed in hard work, and he believed in helping people. Not for reward, not for recognition, but just because it was the right thing to do. I told them the story, the true one, about the bar in 1965, the $30,000 and the handshake, about Arthur Templeton and the promise he kept for 60 years. "Arthur Templeton's promise saved my life," I said. "It rescued me from poverty. But my father's kindness is what saved my soul. It reminded me what we're supposed to be doing here. I gestured around the lobby. This foundation, I said, my voice thick, is dedicated to that idea. It's dedicated to providing legal aid and emergency housing for elderly citizens, people who are facing financial abuse, housing insecurity, or abandonment. People who have become invisible. I looked at Samuel. He nodded once, a small, deep sign of respect. My father's act of kindness saved 2 men, I concluded. It saved Arthur Templeton in 1965, and it saved me 60 years later. The money is just a symbol. The true legacy is the kindness itself. It's my honor to use this gift to pay that legacy forward. We're now open. There was applause. People came up to shake my hand. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in my entire life. Not just security, not just wealth, purpose. I was no longer invisible. I was Henry Volkov's son, and I had work to do. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.